Welcome to the Scientific Explainer. Today, we're totally stripping away all those pop culture myths. We're going to look at the hard, empirical data surrounding literally one of the most astonishing phenomena in all of neuroscience, dissociative identity disorder, or DID. We're talking real brain scans and actual clinical trials that reveal biological realities that honestly sound impossible.
Now, I want you to ask yourself a serious question. How could a woman who was completely, entirely blind for 15 long years suddenly regain her perfect sight simply by shifting her personality? I mean, it sounds like absolute magic, right? But it's not. It's a meticulously documented medical fact, and it absolutely forces us to rethink everything we know about the limits of human biology.
Part 1. The Ultimate Medical Mystery, the Case of Patient BT.
Let's trace how this happened. At age 20, patient BT suffered a horrific accident, and it resulted in something called cortical blindness. Basically, her physical eyes worked perfectly fine, but her brain, it just couldn't process the images anymore. So for 15 years, she lived in total darkness, navigating the world with a guide dog. A bit later, she started therapy for dissociative identity disorder as she was managing over 10 distinct personalities. And then, the literally impossible happened. Right in the middle of therapy, a teenage male alter took over. He just casually picked up a magazine and read the cover out loud. Just like that, her blindness vanished.
Okay, let's dive into this because it wasn't just her vision that changed. When she switched back to her blind alters, the darkness completely returned. And across DID clinical literature, we actually see this kind of thing constantly. We're talking about multiple personalities possessing distinct, measurable biology within one single human body. One alter might have severe allergic reactions, right? While another has literally zero symptoms. Even regional cerebral blood flow, the actual blood pumping in the brain, measurably changes depending on who is currently driving the body. It's wild.
Part 2. The Brainwave Experiment. Tracking Visual Activity.
So, psychologists Dr. Hans Strasberger and Bruno Waldvogel knew they needed to scientifically test her brain's hardware. To do this, they hooked up an EEG to patient BT to measure the electrical signals traveling straight from her eyes to her brain. They put visual stimuli right in front of her, physically making sure her eyes were wide open the entire time. Then they meticulously tracked her brain waves as she switched back and forth between her blind and her sighted personalities.
Part 3. The visual switch in the brain, uncovering the results.
All right, prepare yourself because here is the mind-blowing truth. When the sighted alter was in control, her brain generated perfectly normal electrical responses. But when the blind alters took over, those signals just disappeared. Her eyes were definitely receiving the light, but her brain was actively blocking the signal at a neural relay center, likely the lateral geniculate nucleus, before it ever reached her conscious awareness. It functions exactly like a biological light switch, triggered entirely by her psychology.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that when we look at brain scans of DID patients, we usually see two dominant states. Over on the left, in the emotional part, which is typically the traumatized alter, the amygdala is basically an overdrive, spiking the heart rate and just flooding the brain with raw sensory data. But when the apparently normal part takes control, the prefrontal cortex, the logical center of the brain, ramps up to actively suppress all those overwhelming emotions. The body literally numbs itself. It's a top-down biological override built entirely for extreme survival.
Part 4. The firewall of human memory, the recall experiment.
Now, this crazy biological override, it extends to memory, too. Clinical studies consistently show that severe childhood trauma literally, physically reshapes the brain's hardware. DID patients often have noticeably smaller hippocampal volumes. Now, the hippocampus kind of acts like the brain's save button, consolidating all our memories into a neat, cohesive story. So physically stunting this specific apparatus essentially creates a very real structural foundation for amnesic walls between different identities.
But experiments reveal something incredibly fascinating. The memories, they aren't actually gone. Memory transfer does occur implicitly behind the scenes. The brain successfully stores the information, but it actively blocks the current personality from retrieving it. Think of it exactly like a computer firewall. The file is sitting right there on the hard drive, safe and sound, but the operating system denies you the security clearance to open it. It does this to strictly protect the host from experiencing overwhelming, debilitating pain.
Part 5. Dual reality in one body, philosophical implications.
As the clinical analysis beautifully puts it, DID represents the mind's attempt to compartmentalize its pain. It is a top-down physiological modulation where the mental state can override basic biological functions. And this brilliantly illustrates that human consciousness isn't just a passive passenger along for the ride. No way. It can actually physically alter fundamental biological parameters to ensure its own survival.
Part 6. Who are we really? A reflection. So, let's wrap this up with a thought that's going to stick with you. If the unified I that we all just take for granted every single day can be fragmented into multiple biologically distinct realities within a single human body, if your mind can literally turn off your physical eyesight to protect you from trauma, then what is the true nature of human consciousness? The boundaries of who we really are? Well, they're far more fluid and scientifically mysterious than we ever could have imagined. Thank you for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.